series of notes on the piano using all the fingers. They get them just to use one finger, and you just kind of flex the one finger. Now, you're not imagining protein or anything, but what they're doing here is one group of volunteers had to flex their little finger, the pinky, for 15 minutes, straight 15 minutes, on 5 consecutive days for 3 months. And the scientists tested the strength of the finger. So at the start and at the end, they had a wee set of weights, and they lifted weights with the finger, and it found out that after the 3 months, the finger was 53% stronger. And that's understandable, because they're actually working on flexing the finger. But it's no surprise to guess what the next group were doing. They had to do it in their minds. So they had to just imagine flexing their little finger, not actually doing it, but just imagine it. But incredibly, after doing this for 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week for 3 months, their finger had got 35% stronger, and they had just done it all in their minds. So
it's amazing, isn't it? Because even if you imagine it in your mind, you think, oh, that's a cop-out, that's easy to do. But I've tried doing this in the past, and it's really hard to keep it going in your head, isn't it?
I know. That's often the challenge. And for many people, keeping it going in the head is the challenge. And what they did in this kind of study, actually, they had them doing 15 seconds at a time, and then 20 seconds rest, 15 seconds, 20 seconds rest. So it's a bit easier that way, because you're getting a wee rest in between each bout of visualization. But there's many ways that you can adapt the way that you're visualizing something to make it easier, and it's not as hard to keep up. Some people make them kind of funny, add some wee elements of comfort into them, or wee laughter parts into them.
We mentioned you on our Facebook page a couple of weeks ago,
cool.
And a lady put a comment on there saying that when she was younger, I'm sure she mentioned it was either a young kid had a cancer or leukemia, something like that anyway, and in his case, he cured himself, and the way he did it apparently was when he was playing Space Invaders, he was imagining that all the aliens were the bad cells in his body, and he was shooting them all away, and it apparently cured him. But I know you have to be careful when we say things like that, in case people jump on the bandwagon and have a go. But it's quite an interesting thing, isn't it? That the power of the mind.
Yeah, I've heard that type of story so many times. I mean, a large number of times. It's amazing that so many people are using the same kind of strategies. And you picked up on a nice point there. Like, be careful about saying these kind of things. What I always say to people is, when you're visualizing something, like, imagining any bad cells, I suppose, are little aliens, and you're blowing them up, or whether you're melting tumours in your body or whatever, it doesn't mean that you have to give up your medication, your drugs, or your therapies. I always recommend to people, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. If you're meeting with a consultant once a month, then keep meeting with a consultant. Do everything they tell you to do. But in addition, use your mind. I actually call visualization like this targeted positive thinking. So in other words, you're targeting your positive thinking directly on the part of the body that you want to heal. So you're not changing anything else, because I guess whatever else you're doing, whichever, medication or whatever therapies, holistic therapies or so you're taking, you have to think. So what visualization or targeted positive thinking does is it tells you what to think about. So it's just really focusing your mind to supplement whatever else you're doing.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, we're like a biological machine, right? And the way we think appears to affect us at a cellular level. And I know from remembering what you spoke about a while back, a couple of years ago, that you've got sort of techniques for changing the way we think to sort of help that.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's plenty of ways that you can, change the way that you think. I mean, classically, people ask me the question, if I think negatively a lot, can I become more positive? And immediately, the very fact that they're asking the question suggests that they're actually motivated to do that. And there's a large number of ways to do it, but one of my favourite, actually, is so incredibly simple. There's a book called A Complaint-Free World, and you can check out their website, acomplaintfreeworld.org, and you get these wee purple bands, and you put a band on your wrist. You can order the bands from the internet, you get them free, and you put one on your wrist, and it's a complaint bracelet. And every time you complain, and broadly what that means is every time you complain or moan or criticise someone or unfairly judge someone, then you've got to move your band from one wrist to the next wrist. So, and then you complain again, or you moan, or you criticise, or you're wallowing in negativity, for example, then you've got to take it off and put it on the other wrist again. And you find yourself going through the day continually changing it from one to the next, one wrist to the next. But what that does for you is it absolutely makes it very clear how you act and how you think and what you're actually like most of the time. I mean, when I first got my band, and here's me, I give lectures on positive thinking, right? And I changed my band about 10 times in the first day.
Right.
And the challenge is to go 21 days without complaining. You know, it's a 21-day challenge, really. And it actually took me about 4 or 5 months to be able to go it, because every time if you get to like day 14 and you complain, then you've got to take your band off, put it to the other wrist, and go right back to day one again. But what it is very, very highly effective for people to get them to change the way that they're thinking. And people frequently report when they do something like this that they feel much better at the end, that they've actually trained themselves to be more optimistic, to be more positive. It doesn't mean be afraid of negative thoughts, don't think negatively. It's only a 21-day period. It's just a training thing, really, where it helps you to learn, to catch yourself, to become aware of the sort of things that you're thinking about. And when you become aware of what you're thinking about, you're more likely to be able to choose what you focus your mind upon. So that's probably one of my favourite ways to do it. There are many other things that you can do, but that's probably my favourite one.
So are humans addicted to emotions? And not only addicted, but is there some kind of chemistry or something that happens in the brain that actually mirrors the way we feel, so it creates more of something?
Yeah. I mean, every state of emotion that we feel has a corresponding equivalent in the brain and actually throughout the body. And I think many people are maybe familiar with the term a neuropeptide. And a peptide really it's an umbrella term for a string of amino acids in the body, and it could be a protein, or it could be a hormone, or it could be an enzyme. These are all different types of peptide, but you get a type called a neuropeptide, and what that means is it does something in the body, but it also does something in the brain. So it has like kind of double role. It's present really all over the body, including the brain. And neuropeptides are often referred to as informational substances, or even the biochemical equivalent of an emotion. So you feel like compassion, for example, then there will be a neuropeptide or a couple of neuropeptides associated with that emotion. And what they do is they bring about, they actually cause chemical changes in the body and throughout, in the brain and throughout the body. If you feel like, basically what it allows you to do, if you feel compassion, for example, it allows compassion to show up in the body, somewhere physically in the body. In other words, compassion can impact cells all throughout the body, because the chemical equivalent of it, this neuropeptide, can actually circulate around your bloodstream, and it'll circulate around until it meets some cells that it has an affinity with, and then it'll cause changes there. So in other words, these neuropeptides are one of the ways that the mind and the body are united. But you can even become addicted to emotions, because there's neuropeptides or neurochemical substances that are the equivalent of a kind of good feeling that you get. Like if you get a high, like runners get a high when they're exercising a lot, but even people experiencing happiness get a high as well. And that the chemical equivalent of that is the brain's natural versions of morphine. So just like morphine and heroin, which are both opiate drugs, can be addictive, so the brain's natural versions of certain emotions can also be addictive.
It's kind of strange how the body works, isn't it? Because it's almost like it's like perpetually creating the things that you don't want and the things that you do want. So if you obviously don't want to be depressed, but then you're teaching your body to be depressed and produce more depressing chemicals.
Yeah, it's funny that the body seems to the body really reproduces everything that we're focusing on most of the time. But what I say to people, it's something I mentioned just briefly a moment ago, is never be afraid of a negative thought or even being depressed for a period of time, because short-term patterns of thinking and feeling don't actually do any damage to the body at all. I mean, the body has a very well adapted capacity to regulate itself and balance itself. So even a couple of days of anger and frustration can be very, very healthy, because getting things out of your system, it's better out than in, so to speak. But It's the long-term patterns of thinking and feeling that can have an impact on the body. So if a person was angry and frustrated all the time over a long period